Hi guys, it's April and I garden down in southeast Nebraska, zone 5B, and I am sitting inside right now because it is disgusting out there. And I thought I'd just sit down and talk to you about how I plan and how I lay out and make decisions when it comes to doing my garden. I have several different methods in which I have cultivated over the last 2.5 years on trying to figure out how to keep track of myself, because when you start seed starting indoors, it can get overwhelming very quickly. And then when you're trying to figure out what to put in beds, once again, it can get overwhelming very quickly. I started out with just a simple garden journal where I was taking all kinds of notes and I was doodling all kinds of layouts, trying to figure out what would work in my beds, doing color coordinating stuff, and that was my first year of gardening. But as the season went on and as I was trying to keep track of the knowledge I was learning and wanting to make sure I knew what was happening throughout the season, I switched over to a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet at this point is probably more in depth than a lot of people really care about, but it is the culmination of all of the knowledge that I want to keep together and keep moving forward as I continue my gardening journey. Each year I start a new spreadsheet and it's got various different things. It's got, you know what? I'm going to show it to you. I will quickly let you know that several different things went into putting all of this information together. I did initially get one of these sliding Clyde's garden planners that helped me figure out some of my start dates for both direct seeding and starting. I have also gone to the Farmer's Almanac. I figured out my first and last frost dates. I've used the Johnny seed starting guide and I've thrown all of that together, and then through the process of keeping track of what happens as I actually do stuff, it's kind of shifted and morphed things together. This is my third year gardening. So this is my third garden journal spreadsheet, and I'll show you what it looks like. So this is my 2023 gardening journal spreadsheet. I've got several tabs across the top. Right now I'm on the planting tab, which tells me when it's a good time to start stuff. But I have other tabs. I'll walk you through all of this. So on this tab, I have all of the things that I have decided that I want to start at various different times. And this pink line is when I should be starting things indoor, the light pink signifying how early I can, and the dark pink being this is for sure by the time in which you have to start something. I've also added in red, this hardening off period, and then green is when things get planted outside. If it's this teal color, I can plant things out this early if I wanted to, but once again, as soon as you hit that bright green, this is when you should be getting things planted outside. Technically, according to where I'm at, my last frost date this year is May 1st. But I have always, just because it's easiest to remember and the frost date is always kind of sliding a little bit and it gives time to heat up a little bit, I've always just used May 13th. Not only is it easy to remember because it is my birthday, but it's just, I like the number 13. Let's be honest. It just helps me for sure know that by the time my birthday rolls around, I need to start for sure getting everything outside. So at the top, I've got the months sliding across, and each of the numbers that are in gray is when a week out from a frost date is. So above it, I've got 1 week out, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out. And that kind of just tells me when I need to start thinking about everything. You'll see some of these boxes are all over the place. The thinner line boxes are when I have done things previous years, and these darker boxes are when I'm doing them already. So this is this year. So the only things that I have started right now, technically, are onions and celery. I have some lettuce, but we're not going to talk about that. That's for the guinea pig, and I don't know if it's even going to end up outside. But down below this kind of weird planting spreadsheet information thing that I have, I've got some tables of information on different plants that I've gathered throughout the internet. And some of them are from the Farmer's Almanac. Some of them are from Johnny's Seeds. Some of them I can't honestly remember where I picked them up from. But I just got an explanation of what different freezes are and what those temperatures are. I've got my technical zone frost dates on where they estimate because of my zone when those frost dates will be, and then my actual according to the Farmer's Almanac. And then when the year goes by and I'm done with this gardening year, I'll put in when that first and last frost date actually happened so I can do some of my own comparison if I wanted to. But this sheet technically goes all the way across. It's got a whole bunch of fun information on different vegetables, on different flowers, on different just fruits, everything in general. So a lot of these charts exist all over the internet, and I wanted a place where I could throw them all together and I could start doing a comparison and decide when I actually wanted to start things. And so that is what all this is. And I don't know how much more you actually want to know about this, but for sure, just tell me if you want to see more in depth about some of this information, and I can definitely provide that. But I'm going to start getting into some of the fun stuff. So I have at front, this is my gardening journal where I record the highs and lows for the day and any water we received. And then an extra area for notes where I can decide to write down if I started something, if I noticed something significant happening in the garden, so that if I want to look back at these notebooks, these spreadsheets, I can, and I can do some fun comparisons. I kind of got this idea from Thomas Jefferson's garden journal. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read it or looked at it or even know about it, but Thomas Jefferson kept a journal of the happenings that was happening in his gardens at his home. And it just had various random things of saying, hey, we got this many beans, we planted out the orchard on this date, that kind of stuff. And I found it kind of fascinating. So that is why this page came into being. And then I started keeping track of the averages across the month. I don't track anything in January because nothing can happen in January where I'm at. Technically, things as far as December can happen of planting garlic, so I just put December in there. But my gardening journal always starts in February. So you've got the total water, the average highs, and the average lows. I do have a spreadsheet that does a comparison over the years of all of this information that I have in each individual gardening journal that I'll show you next. As the season goes on, and as I'm planting things, I have this harvest spreadsheet where I keep track of everything I've started, either indoors or direct sown, what date it's happened, when I notice something sprout, what the estimate days to harvest is, so I can have an expected harvest date, and then I can record when I actually started harvesting, and then it will tell me how many days it was to harvest from my sprout date to when I actually pulled something in, and I can record the amount, and then I can record when I decided to pull that plant because either it's died or it's the end of the season or whatnot. I do have this area for a running total that I can start keeping track throughout the year of how many of specific items, not just varieties that I'm pulling in, so I can have that full total. And through that, I have these fun charts that end up populating themselves where I can see what the temperature is doing, what the water is doing, and then at the bottom, I'll start to see this running total of how much I'm harvesting. Just kind of fun. I can show you a version of this actually filled out. Let's see if I got the 2022 garden. You'll see all of that information filled out, and you can see all of those running totals, and I'm just a nerd for this kind of information. It's fun. I like it. I've already showed you the planting tab, but I've got this weird seed count tab because I have way too many peppers and tomato plants that I want to grow all of them. But realistically, given the types of trellising structures and the pots and the beds that I actually have space for, I have to figure out how to narrow them down. And this sheet just helps me do that. So I have a list of all of the tomato seeds I have and I can start. I have a list of all the pepper plants that I have and I can start. I have the number of cages and hooks and spiral trellises and pots that I have available for specific things. And then I have to make the decisions of, I have 61 tomato plants that I can start. 19 of them I don't have space for. I have 33 peppers that I can start. There are 9 I don't have space for. This sheet just helps me figure out some of that stuff. My layouts tab. This is where I record where I actually planted everything. So the only thing I have out right now is the garlic that I planted out. I believe it was November, and what type of garlic it was. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places on which garlic was set out. Bringing back up the 2022 garden, you can see this all filled out, where I put all of my tomatoes, where I put my peppers. Peppers are in green, tomatoes are in red, everything else is just in black. Why I chose to do that, I don't know. I also took this picture of when I was doing a second planting of radishes, because I just threw them in the bed in such a weird way, and there was no way I was going to be able to keep track in this grid spreadsheet on what was actually happening. So I threw it up into Photoshop and actually did little circles on where each of those radish plants were actually planted. Sadly, none of them came up. So I'm still figuring out this gardening thing. But as you can see, the garden has changed a little bit because I now, instead of in-ground stuff down here, I have those raised beds, which I'm really excited to try this coming year. And lastly, because my notes tab isn't really that exciting, I've got this fermentation tab. So this is where I denote what I'm fermenting when I started. Then it will tell me how many days it's currently been fermenting unless I put a stop date on it. I did a couple things last year. I keep on bringing 2022 up to show as comparison. And so when that stop date is put in, that current date no longer shows, and it'll show how many days it actually fermented. Is this necessary? No, but I thought it was some fun information to just keep track of. So that is my current gardening journal and how I track everything and figure everything out. I know it's a lot and I know it's overwhelming, but I'm going to show you more. I told you I have a harvest over the years kind of spreadsheet. And that's what this is. So I can see the total water accumulation over 2021 and 2022, and I can see that compared on this chart. And then I can add in 23 and 24 and 25, and it doesn't matter however long I decide to actually keep track of that stuff. And I can just see how all of that progresses and how all of that changes, along with the highs and lows of those years. I like numbers, and I like visually seeing those numbers laid out. You can see some of the trends that are starting to happen, and I think it will help me understand why my plants are doing what they're doing. If I know some of this stuff, maybe it won't. I don't know. But I also decided to kind of do the harvest comparison over the years. So last year I got 311 beans. The year before I got 397. So I can see how some of that changes over the years and maybe relate that back to what happened in the weather, or maybe it was something that I did, or maybe I just didn't plant the same amount. But it's kind of fun to see those numbers side by side and then see them laid out next to each other, which led to all of these tabs. I'm not going to step you through every single one of these tabs because they are too numerous to count. But I broke down the harvests by radish, squash, onions, melons, garlic, greens, carrots, beans, all those peppers and tomatoes and whatever, just so I can see if there is a variety that just isn't doing well for me. And maybe I need to think about not growing it unless it tastes spectacular. So for this first sheet, I've got my slicer tomatoes, and I've broken it down by variety. Most of these I've only grown 1 year, and so I don't have anything to compare it to. But some of these, like the black crim tomato, I have a couple years of comparison. So I did one plant in 2021. It took 114 days from sprout to harvest, and I got 22 tomatoes off of that. Last year, I actually planted 2, one that I grew myself and one that I got from a local community crop program. And mine took 165 days from sprout. Theirs took 89 days from when I bought it, when I actually got a harvest. And then through those plants, I got 13 tomatoes and 28 tomatoes. You would think those would be the same, but it was actually the location that ended up changing how many tomatoes I got out of these. But it's interesting, fun things to see. And I've got the same thing for Roma tomatoes and for snacker tomatoes, and then for hot peppers. And I'm not going to walk you through all of these because this is just a lot, and I understand that it's a lot. But I'm a numbers girl, and I don't know how many of you guys are this nerdy, but I thought I'd share. I did find something new that I'm playing with a little more this year, because it is laid out in a visual way that is a lot like my own planting guide here, and that is this new program called Seedtime. And you guys have probably seen all kinds of ads for it. I got suckered in, and I decided to try their free account. So this is through their free account. I am not paying for this. My spreadsheets do what I want it to do. There's not enough here yet for me to justify, but it has helped me with seeing if I'm kind of on the right path on when I should start anything. But this is helpful when I'm starting something that I've maybe never started before. Okay, so straw flowers. I've always struggled with straw flowers. They just added flowers into this program, and so I put in straw flowers. Right now, because of where my frost lies, they're telling me that I can direct sow straw flowers around April 2nd. They're saying I can start to direct sow. Will I do that? I don't know. Maybe I'll direct sow some, maybe I'll start some indoors, but I like playing around with this program and seeing what might happen and when that harvest window might happen, and if I decide I want to do some continuous harvest kind of techniques, what that might look like. Because I am on the free account, there's only certain things that I can add to this list. I can't add any unique varieties, but I think this is an interesting tool to play around with if you're just trying to learn when to plant and when to direct sow and when to start and all of that kind of stuff. I will leave a link down below if you want to check this out. But it has helped me a little bit with some of the newer stuff that I'm picking up. They do have some built-in tools as well. So they generate these task lists. I technically don't have anything to do today. They also have a journal section where you can keep track of stuff like I do on my journal section in my spreadsheet. I know they're thinking about adding new features like a garden layout, weather patterns, maybe like seed inventory, which I also keep track of in another spreadsheet that I won't bore you with, and things like that. This is a brand new program, so they don't have everything fleshed out yet. But for this calendar feature and just playing around with this calendar feature, I've enjoyed it just to see. And something like this I can move around quicker than I can in Excel, so it's just something new to play with. So those are the tools I'm using right now to help me figure out my garden. I still draw up quick gardening ideas in my journal that I was talking about. This one right here. I think I even have 2023 roughly sorted, or at least I've tried to roughly sort some stuff. I find this quicker sometimes than trying to mess too hard in Excel. I think Excel is for like my firm plan where things actually happened. And I do go rogue when I finally get out there with a whole bunch of plants. Sometimes things just happen. But I think I've talked long enough. I've probably been here for about a half an hour just showing you spreadsheets. And I hope that's okay. I know I'm a little weird and not everyone does it this way. I know there are some more free-spirited people. I just don't always happen to be one of those. I love my spreadsheets. I need a drink. I've been talking too long. I would love to know down below how you like to keep track of your garden, if you keep track of the garden, if you want to keep track of your garden, how you decide what you're going to plant out and how the layout of your garden goes. I'm always curious on what other people do. It sometimes influences how I end up setting up mine, so I would love to start a conversation with you guys. I will be getting back into starting stuff soon. I'm waiting on one pack of flowers that I want to start. I think it's going to come tomorrow, and maybe the next day or the day after I'll actually start a bunch of flower seeds. But then we're going to be into the peppers and the tomatoes, the massive stuff, and will I decide to cut down on the amount that I'm starting, or will I just start everything just because I can? I might actually just start it all and decide later what actually gets out into the garden. I do have a couple of people that I might pass some plants on to. I don't know. I also don't have 100% retention rate. That was the worst way to say that. I don't always keep my starts alive. So sometimes it's good to start more than just what I want. And sometimes it helps me decide which varieties I grow because I kill off a variety. So if you want to follow me on my 2023 gardening journal and the chaos that I know is eventually going to happen, subscribe down below, hit the bell, do all the things to get all of the notifications. And I hope to see you again in another video. Heart you beautiful faces.